2 bombs hit nearby, a deadly signal of intent.
Okay, bring the car outside.
From our vantage point nearby, we became the target as Gaddafi troops came to about 70 meters of our position. And sprayed our vehicle with bullets. Our escape with a shot-out tyre was touch and go. Ras Lanuf was hit by a 2-pronged ground attack from Gaddafi troops laying down blanket fire. Many rebels were killed.
Plenty people is dead inside. Plenty. I don't know number, but I think number is up. Hospital is bombed.
The retreating makeshift rebel army withdrew to lick its wounds and mourn its dead.
Where is the European Union? Where are the Muslims? They're killing us and Gaddafi's finishing us off. All the youth have been killed and everything's been blown up. A lot of people have died.
Everyone had wondered why Gaddafi's forces had not hit back in force in eastern Libya. On Thursday they did. It leaves them in a commanding position in a strategic area of the country. Where that leaves the opposition forces is anyone's guess. Tony Bertley, AlJazeera, Ras Lanuf, Libya.
Well, in his latest interview, Muammar Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, warned the rebels they will face defeat. Imran Khan reports.
If they want to support the militia, do it. But I will tell you from now, you're going to lose. We will win. And we're not afraid of the American fleet, NATO, France, European. This is our country. We live here, we die here.
Defiant words from Saif al-Gaddafi, the son of the Libyan leader.
To those terrorists.
The rhetoric hasn't changed. The rebels are simply terrorists and the Libyan nation is united. It's a theme he further explores, saying that pro-Gaddafi demonstrators make up the vast majority of Libyans.
2 days ago, have you seen thousands of people marching the streets and the squares? You saw them early in the morning?
Yes.
This is the real picture of Libya.
But even when announcing the return of captured Dutch soldiers, he allows himself a slight smile, a sign perhaps that confidence is high in the government camp.
So we captured the first NATO soldiers. We're sending them back home, but we're still keeping their helicopter, the armed helicopter.
On the ground, though, it's a confused picture. The tiny town of Bin Javid has seen fierce fighting and no real picture of who's winning. The jets still fly overhead as talk on whether to enforce a no-fly zone dominates the international agenda. Perhaps, though, Gaddafi's last words are his most telling.
Libya is not a piece of cake. We are not a Mickey Mouse.
Fighting words indeed. Imran Khan, AlJazeera.
Well, at the meeting of the Gulf Cooperation Council in Saudi Arabia, Arab nations said they'd support a no-fly zone and want to establish ties with the Libyan opposition.
When it comes to Libya, I think the regime has lost its legitimacy. We support the no-fly zone. We also support contact with the National Council in Libya. It is time to discuss the situation with them, and the Security Council should shoulder its responsibility. It is important to impose the no-fly zone. The GCC already announced this, but I think there should be international support.
Well, NATO and the European Union have given the green light to send warships to the Mediterranean off Libya's coast. But debate continues over declaring that no-fly zone. Britain and France have backed the plan, but the US is expressing deep reservations. From Brussels, Alan Fisher now.
NATO is not about to go it alone. Call from member nations for a no-fly zone in Libya have been getting louder. But the organisation's Secretary-General says 3 principles must be met before NATO can take action.
Firstly, there has to be demonstrable need for NATO action. Secondly, there has to be a clear legal basis. And thirdly, there has to be firm regional support.
The Americans want a United Nations resolution. The Russians want details of how a no-fly zone would work. Others just want some information.
It's always a difficult subject. I'm waiting to hear what will be said today. I don't have any preconceived ideas.
NATO would take the lead in any action to cripple Colonel Gaddafi's air defences and air force. But NATO and European politicians want support from the African Union and other Middle East countries, because the last thing they want is this to be seen as Western military action against an Arab nation.
We do not want to get sucked into a war in North Africa. We want to have freedom, we want to support peace, and therefore we have to decide careful and wise. And this means we always should think about the end of the development which starts now.
Military experts say they could have a no-fly zone above Libya up and running in 2 to 3 days. The politicians are the ones who first have to give the green light. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, Brussels.
Well, France and Britain have issued a joint statement to the European Council saying the EU should prepare to support the Libyan Opposition National Council. Both David Cameron and Nicolas Sarkozy repeated calls for Gaddafi to step down immediately. France had earlier recognized the Benghazi-based Opposition Council as Libya's rightful government. And security forces in Saudi Arabia have opened fire during a protest in the country's east. The Saudi Interior Ministry says 2 protesters and a policeman were injured, but it says officers only fired into the air in the city of Qatif. Bernard Smith reports.
A second day of protests in the eastern Saudi Arabian city of Qatif. This footage is from YouTube and apparently shot on Thursday, although it can't be independently verified. What sounds like the crackle of gunfire comes from the distance. Saudi police are reported to have opened fire to disperse the crowd. At least 2 people were injured. This restive region is home to mainly Shia Muslims. Neighbouring Bahrain is 70% Shia and has been racked by weeks of protests. These scenes are just the sort of contagion feared by Saudi Arabia's Sunni Muslim leaders. And so, in a region where most rulers have extremely deep pockets, the Gulf Cooperation Council has decided to try and buy itself out of trouble. Bahrain and Oman are to benefit from a multi-billion-dollar aid package from their richer neighbours.
$10 billion for the Kingdom of Bahrain and $10 billion for the Sultanate of Oman. We believe that this is an ambitious program, but it also shows the strong support that comes from the GCC countries to the Sultanate of Oman and to the Kingdom of Bahrain.
In protests in Qatif on Wednesday, the crowd chanted "Down with the regime" and "No Sunni, no Shia, we are Muslim." But the Saudi Sunni leadership is deeply suspicious of the role of Shia powerhouse Iran. There is a call for protests across Saudi Arabia on Friday, despite an official ban. Witnesses in the capital, Riyadh, say riot police have started patrolling around shopping malls and main roads.